January 26, 1945. 7:42 a.m. near the Sauer River, Luxembourg. The forest is silent. Snow hangs from shattered pine branches. American infantry crouch inside frozen foxholes, barely daring to breathe. Across the valley, hidden beneath camouflage nets, German artillery waits for the order to destroy them. Then, a young American lieutenant reaches for his field radio. Not a general, not a corps commander, just a forward observer standing less than 1,000 yards from the enemy. His gloved finger presses the transmit button. One calm sentence disappears into static. No shouting, no dramatic speech, only a few carefully chosen words. For several long seconds, nothing happens. German officers continue studying their maps, convinced the Americans are isolated and badly outgunned. Intelligence reports have assured them that artillery batteries are scattered across miles of frozen countryside. Even if the Americans respond, it will come piecemeal, battery after battery, each firing separately. They have seen this before, or so they believe. What they cannot see is that hundreds of American guns, hidden beyond hills, forests, villages, and rivers, are already turning toward exactly the same patch of ground. Dozens of fire direction centers are solving the same problem at the same moment. Telephone lines hum. Switchboards come alive. Computers do not exist. Yet calculations race across maps faster than most armies believe possible. Within minutes, nearly 300 artillery pieces are preparing to fire as though they are one enormous weapon. The Germans never hear engines. They never see tanks. They never spot aircraft. Only the sky itself begins to change. By 1945, American artillery had become so precise that commanders could mass fire from batteries separated by many miles, delivering thousands of shells onto one target almost simultaneously. Veterans would later describe it as if the earth had exploded all at once. But how could one lieutenant, with nothing more than a portable radio, command the firepower of an entire artillery network? And how did a single transmission become one of the deadliest weapons on the battlefield? Long before Allied soldiers crossed into Germany, American planners had reached an uncomfortable conclusion. No army could afford to fight the Wehrmacht on equal terms. German divisions possessed experienced officers, disciplined infantry, and some of the most feared armored formations in Europe. Their defensive doctrine was designed to absorb attacks before destroying them with concentrated fire. The United States chose a different path. Instead of relying solely on larger guns or heavier tanks, American commanders invested in something less visible but far more revolutionary: communication. Every artillery battery became part of a single network. Telephone cables stretched for miles. Radio frequencies were standardized. Fire direction centers, known simply as FDCs, began transforming scattered batteries into one coordinated system. Each battery no longer fought alone. Every gun became part of a continent-sized machine. At its center stood an unlikely figure, the forward observer, usually a lieutenant, armed not with a rifle alone, but binoculars, maps, and a radio. His job was simple in theory: find the enemy, call for fire. In reality, it required nerves stronger than steel. He had to move with frontline infantry, often exposing himself to enemy snipers and mortar fire while calculating target locations under unimaginable pressure. One mistake could kill friendly troops. One correct transmission could destroy an entire battalion. During the winter fighting along the Western Front, German commanders repeatedly launched local counterattacks through forests and narrow valleys. They understood terrain. They understood surprise. What they underestimated was how quickly American artillery could react. One observer spotted movement: columns of infantry advancing through tree lines, half-tracks emerging from hidden roads. Instead of contacting one nearby battery, he requested a corps-level fire mission. The message spread instantly. Relay stations repeated coordinates. Fire direction centers checked firing data. Command posts assigned batteries. Within moments, units separated by dozens of miles were solving identical firing solutions. German officers expected scattered explosions. Instead, entire hillsides erupted together. Shells arrived almost simultaneously despite being fired from different locations. To the men below, it seemed impossible. No warning, No gradual increase, only instant destruction. Many survivors later believed they had walked directly into a pre-planned bombardment. They had not. It had been created in minutes. The true genius of American artillery was not the gun itself. The famous 105mm howitzer was reliable. The larger 155mm long tom delivered devastating power. But neither weapon alone changed the war. The network did. American fire direction centers calculated something extraordinary. Different batteries sat at different distances. Some shells required 20 seconds to arrive. Others required 40. Some nearly a minute. Instead of firing together, each battery fired at different moments. The goal was astonishingly simple. Every shell would land together. This became known as time on target. For the enemy, there was no first warning round, no opportunity to seek cover. Hundreds of explosions erupted almost simultaneously. Entire defensive positions disappeared before soldiers understood they were under attack. One lieutenant with a radio had effectively synchronized the firepower of an entire artillery command. Lieutenant Robert Weiss lay behind a shattered stone wall overlooking a crossroads in France. German trucks had begun arriving before dawn. Engineers, machine guns, supply wagons. Something larger was coming. His infantry company could not stop it. He opened his radio, adjusted his map, read the coordinates. The response was immediate. Fire mission acknowledged. Minutes felt like hours. Then the first shell struck. Except it wasn't the first. It was one of hundreds arriving almost together. The crossroads vanished beneath smoke. Vehicles flipped into the air. Telephone poles shattered. Entire columns dissolved before reaching the front. When American infantry advanced later that afternoon, they discovered abandoned equipment, overturned artillery pieces, and survivors too stunned to organize resistance. For many soldiers, the bombardment had seemed almost supernatural. German officers respected artillery. They had relied on it since Poland, but what they encountered in late 1944 and early 1945 was unlike anything they had anticipated. Captured documents repeatedly mentioned the speed of American response. Some veterans recalled that movement during daylight had become increasingly dangerous. Others described American artillery as appearing everywhere at once. The problem wasn't merely firepower, it was uncertainty. Any patrol, any vehicle, any concentration of troops could be observed, and if one observer saw them, hundreds of guns might answer. Confidence slowly became hesitation. Hesitation became delay. Delay became defeat. None of this happened by accident. America's industrial strength extended far beyond factories producing shells. It produced radios by the tens of thousands, miles of communication wire, standardized maps, reliable trucks, replacement vehicles, training schools for artillery officers. Mass production allowed batteries to remain supplied even during relentless campaigns across Europe. Meanwhile, mathematical procedures became standardized so every fire direction center solved problems the same way. Whether in France, Belgium, or Germany, the language of artillery remained identical. That consistency allowed an observer who had never met a distant battery commander to coordinate devastating fire within minutes. The battlefield had become a connected system, and the radio was its nervous system. The Germans entered many engagements believing victory depended upon maneuver. American doctrine quietly shifted the equation. Movement itself became dangerous. Road junctions, bridges, assembly areas, even forests offered little protection once observed. The lieutenant carrying a radio no longer represented one company. He represented hundreds of guns waiting beyond the horizon. What appeared to be one isolated soldier was, in reality, the trigger for one of the most sophisticated artillery networks ever built. By the final months of the war, many German attacks failed before infantry even reached American lines, not because they lacked courage, but because one radio transmission could unleash the destructive power of an entire corps. When the guns finally fell silent across Europe in May 1945, the battlefield looked very different from the one that had existed 6 years earlier. Victory had belonged not only to bigger armies or better weapons. It had belonged to those who could connect information, communication, and firepower faster than their enemy. German commanders who once trusted surprise attacks and concentrated formations found themselves confronting an opponent capable of destroying both within minutes. Their assumptions had collapsed, not because one American lieutenant possessed extraordinary authority, but because he stood at the end of an immense network built on training, discipline, mathematics, logistics, and industrial strength. The portable radio became more than a communication device. It became a force multiplier. One observer could speak. Hundreds of guns could answer. The principles refined by American artillery officers during World War II, centralized fire direction, decentralized observation, and time-on-target coordination, would shape artillery doctrine for decades, influencing military operations throughout the Cold War and into the modern era. The lesson was impossible to ignore. They believed they were facing a handful of soldiers. Instead, they were facing an entire army connected by a single voice. And sometimes in war, history is not changed by the loudest command, but by the quietest radio call.